on this computer. Woot. All right, so let's make this to-do app. So I'm going to create, by the way, take is a command that combines make dir and cd into that directory. I found out about it a year ago, and now I can't live without it. So I'm going to create a server folder. And actually, you know what? Let's do most of this in VS Code, because that's where we're all familiar with. All right. So I've got my server. Let's open up that terminal. And okay, what's the first thing I need to do when I'm creating an Express app? I could spell. Npm something? Npm
Install Express?
Almost. I need to initialize Npm init to initialize an Npm project. And when I do that, it creates a Package.Json folder. Once I have a Package.Json folder, then I can add my packages to it. So let's do that. Let's add, and checking my cheat sheet. Okay, so let's do npm install express, and I'm going to install a couple other things. Morgan, because I like how Morgan tells me when things are happening on my server. And I'm also going to bring in a package called UUID, which creates guaranteed unique strings. And I'm going to need that for creating IDs. All right, so I've created all that, super. Now let's create our index. So I'm going to do this quick and dirty. So let me see if I can do this without const express equals require express.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
I can't see where you're typing. I think I'm seeing like a
okay,
wrong
hold on.
screen.
Probably. Let me reshare. Let me do that again. Oh, yes. Can you see me now?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. All right, so we're going to require express. I'm also going to bring in the other two packages, const Morgan equals require Morgan. So if you hear strange sounds coming from my VS Code, it's because it's a new feature that just got released like today that will give you visual indications or audio indications when there are errors. I may turn it off in the future, but I always like trying stuff out, or stuff like that out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import this. So what this line here is doing is it's importing a package from this UUID or a module, and it's the name of the module is v4, but I want to call it UUID because it's easier for me to look at my code and know what it's doing. v4 could mean anything, so I'm calling it UUID. I could call it anything, but UUID is what I want, so let's do that. All right, so once I've imported Express and everything else, does anybody remember what I do next?
const app.
Yep.
Equals to express function.
Yep. All right. And just because I like doing this pretty much right away, we're going to do an app.listen. We're going to listen to port, let's say 4000. And I'm going to make a callback, and all the callback is going to do is console.log. We'll say and not app.listed, app.listen. Yes, there we go. All right, now that I've got all that up, I'm going to start my server, which I'm going to run nodemon. Oh, I put this in the wrong folder. Let me just move it. There we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so I now have a running server. So let's think about what I want to do with my server. So I'm going to need an API. What endpoints am I going to need it on my API? And right at the moment, I just want to be able to do a few things. I want to be able to list all the current to-dos. I want to create a to-do. And I want to mark a to-do as completed. Everybody cool with that? Sounds reasonable to me. So let's get some routes set up. So do an app.get. We're going to get the route. Name of the route's going to be to-dos. And all right, and what I'm going to do is when I run a get versus the to-dos route, I want to send a status of 200. And then I want to send the to-dos. And okay. So there is a problem here. It's not even telling me that there's a problem, but there is. And that is that I need a list of to-dos, right? So let's create a list of to-dos. And let's think about the shape of our API. What does a single to-do look like? Well, it's going to be an object. And I'm going to give it some properties. I'm going to give it an ID. I'm just going to say for my sample one, I'm just going to give it a 1. It's going to have a title, which is going to be how very meta of me. And then the completed status. And we're going to say false because I have not made that yet. All right. So I have my to-dos all set up. Let's, oh, what I'm actually going to do, let's just put the full HTTP / local host 4000. All right, so I've done that. Let's see if I can hit that endpoint and get something out of it. So if I do localhost 4000/to-dos, cannot get to-dos. Localhost 4000/to-dos. All right, so listening on 4000. That's kind of interesting. What have I done wrong? res.status 200.send. Just gonna stop and restart. When in doubt, restart everything. Okay. All right. I am not super worried here. res.status here. I just copy this. Make sure it's the same. All right, I'm having problems here, so it sounds like a good time to put in some logging. And luckily, I installed Morgan for logging. And in order to use Morgan, you just do an app.use. So remember, this is middleware. Middleware intercepts every single communication and allows you to do something. In this case, Morgan will run some information and log it for me. So when I try and hit this endpoint and get, ooh, that's new. Morgan deprecate, oh, right. I have to pass it. I have to invoke it and pass it the tiny. Let's make it tiny instead. Super. All right, so perfect. Not sure why putting in logging fixed it, but it did, so I'm not going to worry about it. I probably had a typo in here because I'm Captain Typo. Okay, great. However, I am getting JSON back, which is good, I suppose, but let's just make sure that that works properly. And in order to do that, I'm going to set up some in my experience, if you don't add the express.json, your life becomes a lot more difficult. So yeah, oh, here we go. It didn't like send. So now I'm doing JSON to-dos and it's all working. So wonderful. All right, let's create an endpoint to create a to-do. So what HTTP verb do I need to use?
Post.
Let's give it a go. App.post. What endpoint should I set? Where should we post to?
We can post to /to-dos. It will come back. Yeah.
Exactly. We're going to go to the exact same route because we're using a different verb. It's only going to run this callback when a post occurs. Okay, so when we get the request, we are going to get a body because that's how we get information from posts. So let's construct our new to-do. So we're going to construct a new to-do based on the information that is being received from the post. And then we're going to add it to the list of to-dos. And just to make our lives simple, the response from the endpoint is going to be a list of all the to-dos. In this case, And that's my decision as the developer, because it's going to make my life easier. So let's do it that way. So I'm going to say new to do equals, it's going to be an object, and I'm going to, for the ID, I'm going to use that UUID that I imported. For the title, I am going to look at the request, and I'm going to send it through as title, because that makes sense to me. And finally, completed will always start out as false, because why would you add a completed task to your to-do app? You might want to later. That might be added functionality. Oh, I did a to-do. I want to keep track of, but I never added it to my app. But in this case, I'm talking about what we call an MVP, a minimum viable product. And this is what I'm going to do. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to do to-dos.push. New to-do. And then we're going to do the response dot status. What's the proper status for me to add when I add a to-do? Anyone?
204.
204?
That's like a non
I'd say
message.
201.
201. Yeah.
201, resource created. Okay. And then we'll send the JSON, and we're just going to send the whole to-dos back. Okay. Let's see if it works. Okay, so I can check here to for gets, but it's harder to do posts in a browser. So I'm just going to use the built-in Thunder client here, make a new request. I'm going to say do a http://localhost/4000/to-dos. I'm going to change this to a post. I am going to go to the body, and I'm going to create an object. This has, or this is technically JSON. So I'm going to give it a title of test to do. All right, so if I send this, I get back a list of all of the to-dos. And that's what I expect to see. So this is the content of the to-do variable. Now, I don't have a database set up. I don't really have time to get that done and everything else. But if I were to, that's something to consider down the road. But again, I'm just making a minimum viable product. Okay, so that works. Great. So now all I need to do is add a route for marking a to-do as complete. So when a to-do is complete, I want to change this completed field from false to true. Okay, so let's think about that. So what HTTP verb do I need to use in this case? I'm going to modify a record or update a record.
Is it a put?
You are correct, sir. Okay, now I am going to create a put, and it's going to be on to-dos, but I need to send it an ID. Right, so let's append :ID. Now, if you remember, I'll be able to access that ID, and that ID will be the ID of the to-do. That was, it's either going to be one or whatever is generated out of this UUID software. Okay, so right. And just because it makes sense to me, I want to add completed or complete, right? I want to complete something. It will change the status from completed false to completed true. Okay, super. So that is what I'm going to name that. So all I need to do is I need to be able to access the complete to-do or a to-do. I'm going to access it by the ID that I'm passing in. So const complete to-do or completed to-do equals, all right. So to-dos dot to-dos is an array. So if I want to target a specific member by the ID, what array method should I use here?
Can we use filter?
Filter takes an array and gives you a smaller array. I only ever want one. So better than filter, I think here is find, because find will return to me a single object. All right, so I'm just going to say item. So this takes a callback, which will go through each entry in the array, and then will return back the entry in the array for where the callback is true. So what I want to do is I want to find the item dot ID dot, and I'm going to say toString, and only because I ran into this problem when I was working on this lesson earlier, and rather than painfully pretend that I didn't run into that error and ask you how to fix it, I'm just going to say, when you're getting an ID or a number, something that might be a number, just use toString if you want to make sure that it's going to be the same as the rec.params.id, because this will always be returned as a string. So if you look here, this ID is a number. And when I was testing this out, I was having a mismatch, right? Why can't I find the ID of 1? It's right there. I've hard coded it. It's because the ID is string 1 and I'm using triple equals here. So I've got the completed to do. Next thing I want to do is change the status of and then I'm just going to do a response dot status. We'll say 200. Actually, 201. Let's give it a 201. There might be a better code, but and I'm just going to send the to-dos again. To-dos. Okay. So once again, let's run a test. Let's do a delete. Let's go. And now this no longer exists because of NodeMon rebooting. Every time my node program resets, the memory is flushed. So, but I do know that there is a to-do with an ID of 1. And say complete or completed.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Why are we using delete instead of put over there?
Why? I want to keep it in the list, but I want to set the completed value to false. When you have a to-do list and you're checking things off, you don't want them to immediately disappear. You may just want to have them there, but hey, it's in the completed status. Or at least that's the way I'm building my app. If you want to have yours delete, that's perfectly fine. Both are valid. All right, so let's go to complete and let's, all right, and don't need that body. So let's go back to the query. And if I send this, cannot delete to-dos one complete. Cannot delete. Complete dot completed true. Huh. All right, let's add one and delete it. Delete the new one. Okay, so to-dos. Let's do. Oh, that's what's going on. Hold on. Sorry, my bad. I didn't realize what was going on there. All right. And great. So you see that the completed is now true. It started off as false and ended up as true. Okay. That, my friends, is a complete working API, at least enough for me to get started on the front end. I drink a lot of water when I'm teaching. All right, so server is done. So let's now create the client. I'm going to keep the server running in the background. So I'm going to use create React app because, hey, that's what the cool kids are doing. So MP X 8 React app client. Give it a minute.
John, did you say that the command take is make directory and cd into it?
Yes, if you are using, if you're on a Mac that's using the Z shell or the Z shell, that will work. If
Okay.
if you're using Bash, which if you've had a Mac forever, you might be using Bash, especially if, when I say forever, I mean more than 4 years, which is forever in computer lifespan. Then you may be using Bash. Otherwise, you're probably using Z shell. If you want to find out, you can actually, in your terminal, you can do echo, I think it's echo dollar, SHELL? No, hold on. Echo HEL. Yeah, and you see where it says /bin/ZSH. If it says ZSH, you have the take command. If you don't, then you don't have it. You can find it using Homebrew or whatever.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. I can't live without it, personally. All right, maybe I could live without it, but my life would be less rich. Okay, so I've created it. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to do this from the command line. I'm doing a cd client, and I'm just going to delete the .git directory, because I'm going to be saving this whole thing as its own Git project rather than have a front end and a back end. So I'm just going to remove .git from the .git folder from the client. And there we go. Okay, super. So I may as well stay in the client. All right, super. So I'm in here in the client, and npm start. Let's make sure that it works. Of course, I'm using port 3000. Okay, perfect. Create React app works. Fantastic. So let's clean up the app.js. I always liked saving, I think I've mentioned this before, I just like using that class for default. Styling is outside the scope of this lecture, so but this gives me some default styling, which I think is easier to read. All right, so let's think about what we want our app to look like. So I'm imagining we have at the top, we have a title. What should we call this to-do app? Gottfried, come up with a crazy name for this to-do app.
Fabulous things.
Busy to-dos.
Fabulous busy to-dos. There we go. See, now, Gottfried, you feel invested in this app because now a little bit of you is in this app. All right, so let's come over here. Perfect. All right. Now let's think about what else I'm going to need in this app. I'm going to need a list. Okay. And I am going to need a way to create the to-dos. So, Allison, what do you want near the top? Do you think a list of to-dos and then a place to add the to-dos is correct? Or maybe the other way around? What do you think?
I guess the other way around, like the Tweeter app, just have the input
Okay.
in the front and,
Sure.
or the top, and then.
All right, so for the input, we're going to create a component because this is React. Everything's a component. Let's create a component. What, Allison, what should I name that component?
Just to do, maybe?
So naming things is hard. Let's be a little more specific. Let's call it add to do. Right. So I'm going to create an add to do component. And in this component, here, let's just make it self-closing. There we go. So I've got this add to do. Yes, it's crashed because add to do doesn't exist. So let's, but before I fix it, let's also add the list. Holly, what should I name the list of to-dos?
Things I love to do. Sorry, I'm sorry.
So while I like long and descriptive variable names. I also have to type the damn thing.
Okay.
So
I
how
have-
about to-do list? How
That
does that
works.
sound?
Fabulous.
You know, I should have realized. I should have realized. All right, super. So I'm going to have both of those components. Great. So let's do the first thing, and let's import the components. Yes, I know they don't exist yet, so but I will create them in a particular location. So I'm going to bring add to do from / and let's put them in a components folder. And we'll name the file add to do, and we're also going to import to list from all right, so I should make those yeah, don't worry about those errors right now. All right, so let's create these. Aha, so what I did was I control or command clicked on this, and it says, hey, there's no to-do list file found. Hey, there's a button here to create the file. Bing. See how life is great. The only problem is it doesn't give the proper extension. So I'm going to give it JSX because I like JSX over JS for my components. Oh, and look at it's already trying to be helpful for me by putting JSX there. Okay, well, if it's going to do that anyways, let's just do that. And then there. So now I have my two components. Still having problems because there's nothing in those files yet. So let's just create quick stubs for both of these. So RFCE. No. Let's try to RFCE. There we go. And RFCE. All right. So awesome. All right, let's expand this a little bit. What should we work on first? Should we work on a way, should we work on the form to add to-dos, or should we create the list?
The list.
I like the list, Nico. And that's because I don't want to have to like go and look at my server to see if the to-do's there. I just want to look at the to-do. So my goal is to get the to-do that I have in my backend show up in the front end. Okay, let's do that. Okay, to-do list. All right, so the to-do list is, what do I need for this? I'm going to need some props. Let's think about this. In my app.js, I think the state, the actual list of the to-dos that lives on the front end should live in this app folder, because I want both of these components to be able to access that list. So I'm putting it as high, only as high as I need, which right now is pretty much the top component in my hierarchy, but that makes sense. So let's actually add this, what I need in order to add the to-dos. So if I'm going to have to-dos in this component, how should I add them?
You need to manage the state.
Okay.
You can import it with Fetch or Axios from
Okay.
your server.
All right. Well, let's worry about fetching that first. Let's just give it a place to live, right? So it's like build the birdhouse before you bring the birds, right? So let's build the state. So it's how does use state work again, Gottfried?
You have to import it from the React object,
Yeah.
and then you deconstruct the two. It's like a list of two,
Yep.
like state and use state, or set state out of the use state, and you have to pass it a default value.
Yep. All right. So let's do this. We're going to be to-dos and set to-dos equals use state, and the initial before I load everything from the back end, we're just going to have an empty array. Everybody good with that? Right, so I'm going to have a list eventually, which I get from the back end, but right at the moment, I just need to have something that's a list, an empty list. Okay, super. So when I have this to-dos, it makes sense for me to pass this into the to-do list as a prop. So we have state. We're now going to take that state and we're going to pass it to a child via a prop. Okay, so I'm going to pass down the list of to-dos. So let's actually have a look at my dev tools. Hold on, earlier on I detached my dev tools because I needed something full screen. I can't remember how to reattach it. How do I reattach it? Oh, there we go. Dot to right there. All right, so even now, even with just that little bit that we've done, I can go into the React Dev Tools and I could see here in the app, I've got some state. The state is an empty list. And in the to-do list, I have a prop. The name of the props is to-do, and the value is an empty array. Awesome. Everything is coming up Millhouse. Okay. So let's get the list from the back end into our front end. So what is the best way for me to do that? Any ideas? What should I use within React in order to change or to run once a component is loaded?
The use effect hooked.
Yep. I think exactly. We're going to use effect. So use effect takes a callback, and it also takes a list of component or list of variables that it's going to monitor and rerun when it updates. For the time being, I'm going to leave that blank because I only want this to run when this component is initially loaded. So far, so good? All right, within here, And let's actually, here, let's do this. I'm going to run, I'm going to install Axios because I love Axios. Okay, and I'm going to import Axios. All right, so I guess I spoiled the fact that we're going to need to do an Axios call. All right. Now, before I do this, I'm going to run into an issue, and spoiler alert, it's going to be cores, right? I have a front end and a back end. The URLs for the front end and the back end are different. The front end is localhost :3001. The back end is localhost :4000. So what I need to do is I need to handle cores. I need to make sure that I can communicate directly between the two sides. So
Is that like is that a security check,
yes,
sort of?
it is a security check. You don't want to have just anybody, the ability to run anybody's JavaScript on any web page. You imagine if, say, you have ads on your web page, if they could run whatever JavaScript they wanted to, that would make your life not very happy eventually. So yes, that is a security measure. We want to make sure that only the people we want to run scripts on are allowed to do so. It's fine between servers to other servers, but between servers and browsers, it's a level of security. So what I'm going to do, and this is actually quite clever, here in the package.json file, I'm going to add a new entry. And I'm going to say proxy. I want you to proxy all requests to local host 4000. I have to put an HTTP in front of it. Not S. All right. And what this is going to do is any requests that are being sent via Axios will be sent to this endpoint. So that also allows me to do, and I'm just going to go back here and do this now, is it allows me, you see, I've got to-dos. There we go, never mind. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to, not in the back end, in the front end, we're going to do an Axios call. So normally, I would have to put the fully qualified domain name here, Axios. But here I could just say /todos. So I'm going to run a get, an HTTP get against the to-dos endpoint. That proxy is going to realize, hey, he means the server. So let's send it to localhost 4000. Okay, so when that information comes back, I'm going to get a response. And with that response, what am I going to do with that response? So if we have a look here, I am going to get a list of to-dos. So matter of fact, let's actually console.log All right. I'm not sure why I added a couple more S's, and I am so turning off that sound feature as soon as I have a few minutes. All right, so let's run our front end. And let's open up the console. That's fine, and let's run this. Okay, interesting. So the request failed. Let's restart the front end.
Hey, John, I think all that has to be in the use effect hook. It's written in front
You
of
are
it.
correct. Thank you. Thank you. See what happens when I go too quickly? And it says a missing dependency of to-dos. I'm not going to worry about it though. I only want this to run once. All right, let's try this again. So refresh. Can't, oh, right, because I stopped it. Let's refresh. Would you, yes. There we go. 3001. We'll open up the to-dos, loading. I'm getting an array of nothing. Okay, that's fine because to-dos refers to the to-dos here. So I should have actually said response. So let's run that again. Okay, the response is an object. The object has some properties, config, data, headers, request. Okay, I bet you the one I'm looking for is data, and indeed it is. Data is the array. So what do I need to do with that array that I'm getting back? How do I get that array into my state? Joe, I haven't bugged you yet today.
You want to get into the
So how do I update the to-dos?
Oh, you can use the set to do.
Okay, super. So let's do that. And I'm going to pass in the response dot data. So what this should do, if I am lucky, is, let's just refresh this. To-dos are loading, fantastic. Let's come over and have a look at components. Let's have a look at app. Let's have a look at state. Oh, look at that. The to-do got loaded from our server. How awesome is that? That's flipping awesome. Okay, so I now have a way of getting a list of to-dos in my app. And to leave us all on a cliffhanger, let's take a 10-minute break. It's a cliffhanger. How will this turn out? Will John complete the to-dos app before the end of the class? Who knows? Come back in 10 minutes and we'll keep going.
John, are you talking to me? It's you're mute, I think.
Yes, I'm muted, so that's fine. I decided to get rid of that console log statement just because that's a debugging only statement, and I don't need to keep that in my code. So I figure if I would comment on it in a pull request, then I should probably do it myself. Okay. Awesome. So we've got our list of to-dos. We're passing this list of to-dos to the to-do list, and let's just have a look here, make sure we get the prop. Yep, prop is the to-do. Great. So let's go into the to-do list. Let's, just for the time being, let's just have a look at the prop. So how would I actually take that prop and display it in this component? How do I get the prop, first of all? Or get access to it?
Pass props as the parameter for to-do list.
Yeah, I could do that. Like that. Okay. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the word to-do list there. And I'm just going to let's have a look at what the props are. So this is going to take the props and turn it into a string because React doesn't like it when you try and tell it to print an object or to display an object in HTML. So if I would say run json.stringify versus props, that should, oh yeah, I have to put that inside a pair of curlies. Perfect. Okay. So I have an object with a property called to-dos, which is an array of all the to-dos in my list. Perfect. So let's display the to-dos one by one. So I want a list of to-dos that just have the title of the to-do, just for the time being. What's a good way to do that?
You could wait, who's talking?
You're talking, Gottfried.
Okay. So you could render the list with map. You can
okay.
And you would have to attach to every item a JSX component or syntax, some kind of element, right?
All right. Well, give me an element.
So like the divs, you want to change them to an unordered list, and then you could use list as the element.
I like it. All right. So let's render an LI. And okay, so what do I need to put in here to actually render the to-do? I've got the item.
Return?
Don't need to put a return if everything's on one line.
Item.title?
Yep. Inside curlies. Okay. Okay, I'm getting the everything needs a unique key prop, that warning. So, but I do see my to-dos here. So that's fantastic. That's exactly what I want. How do I get rid of this error?
Give it a key prop.
Okay, I like it. What should I use as the key prop?
The ID.
Artium.id. Didn't realize we were using accents, but that's fine. All right, so let's refresh. The error went away. I still see my to-do. Fantastic. So now I can display my to-dos on the front end that live in the back end. Fantastic. Okay, what next? What feature should we work on next?
The form.
Okay, let's do that. Let's go into add to do. All right, so I have this. Let's just fix it. So I guess I have to think about how this is going to work. Let's go into the app. So in order to update the to-dos, I need to be able to run this set to-dos. The only way to change the value of to-dos is to run set to-dos. So what should I be doing here? How am I going to run? What does it look like when I create a to-do? And it's not what you think it is. At least not the first thing that comes into your mind. When we create a to-do, what happens?
Like after you've already entered the information?
So I have my form, I've got it all working. I click on the button. What happens when I click on that button?
An event, like it
Yep.
push. It push
Right,
the-
but what do I want to have happen when that event occurs?
Oh, handle click.
Okay, I want to handle click, and what's that handle click going to do?
It's going to update
going to-
your API
Yes.
and
Oh, put request. Oh,
also the state.
Okay, so this is going to be interesting. So I'm going to update my to-do with a new to-do. That's then going to update the state. Right? So it's going
Yeah,
to
and also-
update the state. And when it's going to update the back end. Now, the front end doesn't necessarily know what's happening on the back end. But how did we set up our back end? What happens when we create a to-do on the back end?
Well, could you put a dependency in use effect?
I could, and that's completely valid. But when I run the post, I'm getting information back. I am getting my list of to-dos back.
So do we need to like create another use effect, which will be doing?
We could do that. Let's do we want to do it that way? So let's do it that way. But before we run that use effect, let's do things in order. Before we decide how to get things back from the server, we need to get them into the server. Right? So how do we do that?
You can make like an onsave function that sends the data.
Okay. Let's start off by creating a form. Makes sense? I have a form. I'm going to fill in the form. In this form, I'm going to use the onSubmit handler. And I'm going to create a function called handle submit. Okay, inside this form, I need to have two things. I need to have an index, or sorry, an input. All right, and I'm going to give it a name of something really Title. I know how to spell. And I'm also going to create a button. All right, and the button is going to say add a fab to do. All right, so this is what it's going to look like. Handle submit is not defined. Okay, so let's define it. All right. So handle submit, let's fix that. Okay, handle submit is going to be a function. The function is going to take what? It's going to take the event. So the event, the onSubmit event is going to be passed in automatically. So let's use that. You know, call it, I can spell event. All right. And what do I want to do? Well, let's have a look right now. Okay, so this is what it looks like. When I click on this, what's happening? What's happening with my app when I click on this button without anything in it at all?
It's reloading.
Right. So how do I stop that from happening? Because I don't want it to reload.
Prevent default.
You got it, Pontiac. Default. Okay, perfect. So I am preventing the default. All right. So now I want to update, or I want to send, or I want to, how do I want to do this? Do I want to update the API directly from here? Or maybe I should do it from the app. If I update it here, well, let's give it a go, right? What's the worst that can happen? We could change it later if it doesn't work. So let's import Axios from Axios. Okay, and inside here, we will do a post. So it's axios.post. What are we posting to? We're posting to the to-dos endpoint. What are we posting? So when we are sending a post, we are going to pass, or we have to pass in the title. So I'm going to pass in a second parameter into this post. In order to get the name of the title, and I'll just go through this quickly, I can access this part of the form that has the name of title. And the way to do that is to just, yeah. So it's going to be the event.target title dot value. Okay, and what doesn't it like there? What did I break? Event dot target dot title dot value. Event. Let's do this one more time with feeling. Create to do. We're passing in. Event dot. Why is it expecting a comma? What am I missing here? Did I put the comma in the wrong place? I bet you I did. When in doubt, copy and paste.
Yeah, John, should that be like a key value pair?
Oh yeah. Thank you.
And there's an extra curly brace
Yeah.
on that.
Yep, you're correct. Thank you. Thank you. That's right, because I called it something else. So we're going to say event dot target dot title dot value. There we go. There we go. Fantastic. So when we get the response back, oh, hold on. When I get the response back, we're going to do a dot then. All right, response. So what are we getting back? We're getting back a list of to-dos from our API. That's the way we set it up. Right? So how are we going to access, how do we know here when something in the add to do component is changing? So think about the data flow. The list of to-dos lives in the app component. It can communicate via props with its children. The children communicate with the parent via a function, some sort of function. So what I have to do is have a function in here, or use a function that lives here, and pass it into the add to do. What's a good, well, the only function I actually have here right now is a set to dos. So let's pass that in. So I'm passing down that function. Okay, let's go back into the add to do. I now have props. All right, so what I want to do with that response, because the response is going to be what? It's going to be the same thing as the response that happens here. So basically, I want to do the exact same thing. So I'm actually going to copy this. And it's not actually the exact same thing, but it's close to the exact same thing. The only thing I need to do, because it doesn't know what set to dos is, I have two options here, actually. I could put the word props here, or a better way, or I think it's a better way, is destructuring up here. Let's see if this works. What's the worst that can happen? All right. It works. Let's have a look at the props. Okay, super. We have a this was added. This is the crazy ID that it gives, and the title Eat Pizza. Fantastic. So by updating or by sending the taking the output of our API call and passing it into set to-dos, we accomplish what we need to. Notice the way we're doing things here. We're describing what happens, right? We're declaring this is what is going to occur, as opposed to doing the nuts and bolts. So this is declarative rather than imperative. Okay. I think our add to do is done. I think. I now have a
John,
way. Yes.
do we have to control the component? Like, you know, you have a state that updates the value, and you like track the state of the component, and they kind of like on change, it'll change the value, and then the value goes back into the.
There are a number of ways
input.
to do this. You could call this a controlled component because it doesn't have its own state, right? The state for this entire app lives here in app. And what we're doing is we're just controlling it by sending down the instructions, set to-dos. We're passing it in to add to-do. We're accepting it, and then we are doing our stuff. That's the technical term, stuff, in here. And we're then using the function that we passed in to update the state here in app.
Okay.
So this is absolutely valid. There are other ways to do it. This isn't the only way, but it's the way I want to do it today. One minor thing about the app is that when I add the to-do, this is not blanking. So how do I blank out this? How do I blank that input after I add the to-do? Does anybody remember? Oh, you're killing me, Smalls. Okay. It is something on the event. Let me just make sure I'm not lying. Yeah. So when I call the event, what is the target? The target of the event is the form, right? Because the event is the onSubmit. The onSubmit's attached directly to the form. So event.target is the form, and all I need to do is run a reset method on it. So now I come over here. Let's refresh. Hey, notice when I refresh the app, Eat Pizza is still there because it lives in the back end. How fantastic is this? So let's say sing. Oh, I know what. Here. Let's join in the chant. Okay. All right, so we're going to join in the chant. now that I've clicked the add a fab to do, the form blanks out. So that's what reset does. All right. I guess the last thing I want to do here is to add functionality to mark a to-do as complete. Does anybody have an idea about how to do that? What would it look like?
You could have a,
check.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was gonna say you could either have a button next to each element, or you could just click the element itself.
I like the whole click the element thing. So when we complete a to-do, what do we want to have happen? Like how do we let people know that the to-do is complete? I can click on this and it might complete the to-do, but I wouldn't know. So there needs to be some sort of visual.
Can we have like an overline kind of an effect?
Yeah, sure. We could do that. So I think because the to-dos are in our to-do list, let's have a look. All right. Now, dot. So what I'm going to do, and not because it's the best way to do it, but because it's the easiest way to do it, I'm just going to put it in the app.css. So we're just going to create a class called complete. And complete will add a text declaration of line through. All right, let's just make sure that that works. So what I'm going to do in order to test that is come over to the to-do list, and I'm just going to add it to everything for a moment. Class name, remember it's class name in React. And class name equals complete. Perfect, right? That looks like a completed to-do. Okay, so we want to toggle this complete class based on whether the to-do is complete or not. So first thing is we're already passing in the props.todos. Props.todos, that sounds awkward. Here. That's always better. To-dos. So the to-do already has completed on it, right? It's already in the state. So when we get the to-dos, and we can actually see it here, we actually have completed true, completed false, completed false. Fine. So what we can do is, instead of making this a string, we can make this into a JavaScript expression. So we could say, item dot is it complete or completed? I should remember. It is completed. There we go. So item dot completed and okay. Did that work?
The class name is complete, I think.
Oh, you're right. It is complete. Because the first one's good. So that's going to work. Okay, so it's visually going to show up when we change the state. So now we just need a way to change it. And I actually really like the click on the item itself. So let's tidy this up slightly. I'm just going to put this list item on its own line. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. We're going to do that, and we're going to do that, and we're going to tab that in. We're going to tab that in. There we go. There we go. I think that makes it a little easier to read up and down rather than left to right. Still the same, still does the exact same thing. Perfect, it's rendering. Okay, so it looks like we're going to need to have a function. And that function will change the complete or completed property of the object. All right, so let's create a function. We're going to say handle click equals this. So we want to be able to pass in the item. Complete to do. How did I do this before? So how do we change to-dos completed?
A put request, right?
Exactly. Exactly. We're going to do pretty much the exact same thing we did here. So I'm just actually going to copy that Axios request and make changes to it. Okay, so the handle click is going to do this. Now, got to change a few things. Actually, perhaps that was not the easiest way to do that. But there we go. We're going to import Axios. Okay, so we're going to post, or so we're not going to post, we're going to put. And we are going to put, going to pass in an ID. So let's just change this. We're going to do a put to slash to-dos slash, and actually let's use string interpolation. So backtick slash to-dos slash dollar curlies, and then the ID, and then slash completed. So we're going to run a put against this. We don't need to pass it any data because the data is the ID. And then we need to run set to-dos. So if I want to run set to-dos, I need to pass it down. Okay, let's just make sure I've got this, I got this. Okay, great. So I'm just going to take this prop and repeat it here. Okay, and then I can come back to to-do list and add this as its own prop. Okay, so the last thing I need to do is to pop an on-click handler on the list item. Let's do that. So we're going to do this now. we're going to run, let's do an ANFN. No, not that. No, I don't want it to run immediately, so I'm going to put this in an anonymous function, and the anonymous function is just going to run handle click, because I'm going to pass it the item.id. Yeah. Does that, how do people feel about that? Is that going to work? Well, one way to find out. Oh, denied. All right. So nothing's happening there. Let's received false for non-Boolean attribute class name. Oh, interesting. I do love, 404. So it means, that means that it doesn't know what's going on with, I bet you I tried to send it to the wrong endpoint. And I think I did, because it's complete, not completed. Naming things is hard. All right, let's try and eat our pizza. Bang. So the way the data flows is from the app. That's where all my data lives. It's being passed as a prop into my to-do list. And you can even think about this as being its own component, this li. It is a to-do item. Matter of fact, it's complicated enough, maybe factoring it out into its own component might make sense. In this case, I'm just going to leave it as is because there's only 10 minutes left in the class. But we've got everything working. So we are changing the state by updating the API. We're taking the return from that API, passing it in back up into the set state or the set to-dos, and everything's just sort of happening. It's slightly magical, but you can understand how the data is flowing. Data flow in React is very important. Okay. I love this to-do app. I'm never going to complete join in the chant because you never finish that. Holly is smiling very wide because she knows what that is. If any of the rest of you knows what join in the chant means, then you're just as cool as Holly. And well, I'm not cool, but matter of fact, you're all cool, no matter if you know what join in the chant is or not. Questions, concerns? Everybody here is a React expert now.
John.
Yes.
I just see the application page.
The app.js?
Yeah.
Right.
So when you're updating the state with set to-dos, so in Compass, there was this lesson about immutable state patterns.
Yep.
But you're not using it here, but it's still updating everything. So is that like,
yes,
when is that like to be used?
So notice that I'm using set to-dos rather than just setting to-dos equal to the new thing, right? So instead of running set to-dos, normally when you're updating a variable in JavaScript, here, let's just do, I'll put this in, I'll comment this out in a moment. So let variable equals Fred. Right? So if I want to change Fred in regular JavaScript, all I would do is say variable equals Joe. I am mutating that variable. What setToDos does is it takes the previous value. So if I come over here, and let me just, I'm going to comment that out, but I'm going to leave it in the code. So if I come over to add to-dos, you can see I'm running setToDos, and I'm passing in the response.data. The setToDos knows what to do with that data. Now, because I'm just updating the entire to-do list, I'm running setToDos. I could, instead of doing it that way, say I only return the single, the one, or just okay, right? So instead of returning response.data, I'm just receiving a string that says okay. So what I can then do is I would get the previous version of the state and then mutate that. So when you get set state, it's being passed automatically a parameter, which is a copy of the state before it is run, right? So it's going to be passed in. And let me just, I'm trying to do this from memory. So I've got the previous version. Right. And then I can take
Yes.
that and I can update here.
Spread operator or something like that.
There we go. Yes, exactly. And then you can, but I've just done it easy, an easier way, whereas I just get the entire state from the back end every time. Now, let's say I had a to-do list of 10,000 items. That's not going to be scalable, right? A to-do list of 3 or 4 items, yeah, sure, that's, that's nothing on the internet. But 10,000 items, that could take a while, that could be noticeable. So I would not do it this way. I would just say update a single to-do and run a, do the spread operator as Jang said, and then change the value of the previous state.
Right, thank you. Yeah, like if you were to update the list before even going to the back end, you would have to do it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you're thinking of your app, you should have one place is where the data should live, the real data. The state in the front end here is a copy of the state in the back end. The back end is the authoritative. If I make a change here, but I don't send it to the back end, then that change has never occurred. And that's going to confuse a user, right? So let's say I add a to-do, and all it does is it updates the to-dos list in the front end. I could do that. But the back end list of to-dos and the front end list of to-dos is going to be different if I do it that way. So think of the way the data is flowing. It's flowing, it's starting in the back end. When we initially load our app, it's being pulled in as state into the app component. We're then passing it into the child component. So when we add a to-do, That to-do is being passed first to the backend. Backend is then returning the data. We're running the set to-dos, because set to-dos is the only way we ever change the state. We change it here with set to-dos, we change it in add to-do with set to-dos, and we change it in to-do list with set to-dos. It's the only way we're changing the to-do list. And when you run a set to-do that comes out of use state, you must set it to the new value you want the entire thing to be, not just the part of the value you want to change. So if I have 10,000 to-dos and want to update one to-do, I need to, when I run set state, I need to run that with the 10,000 to-dos with one I changed in there. Okay. Anything else? I'm getting really good at timing these. Okay, before you all go, I just want to say muscle and hate. Again, Holly gets that.
Muscle and hate.
Muscle and hate. I had a wild youth. What can I say? Actually, no, not that wild. I'm as white bread as they come. All right, my friends, if you don't have any more questions, I will see you all next week. Remember, I do have office hours on Mondays, and I am happy to talk to people. Thank you. I actually got to work yesterday. It was great. I enjoy it. I know I'm crazy like that, but I love talking with students. So if you have questions, Mondays, you have me for 2 hours where I have no choice but to answer your questions about code. I suppose I do have a choice, but I'm going to do it anyways. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks, John.
Yeah, no worries. Holly is just so happy right now that
I'm in a goofy mood today, and this
I
was
could tell. I could tell. Muscle and hate.
Thank you, John.
Populate itself. Do you like populate itself?
I love it all. Love
Okay,
it all.
good. Good. Yeah, I saw them in concert a few times.
I saw them for the first time at WGT in 2019.
Excuse me.
Life changing.
I saw Populate itself. I can't even remember the name of the club. If the club had a capacity of 50 people, I'd be surprised.
Oh wow! That's how you want to see them.
Oh yeah, it's great. DEF CON 1. Yeah, all right.
Wow, so cool, so
Big
cool.
Mac fries to go.
That's fantastic.
All right. See, yeah, it's things you learn about people.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were so into Nitzer Ab.
Absolute, like one of my top 3 favorite bands of all time. Yeah. Big EBM. I spent a lot of time in Berlin.
Okay. Yeah, no, I it just sometimes when I really want to bang my head, I'll throw that on, and
that's great.
my wife looks at me sideways, and
that's great. Were you a 90s raver? 90s?
Early 90s, late 80s.
I started back then. All right. Well, thank you yet again.
All right, no worries, Holly. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself.
Indeed, always in your lectures.
Okay, okay, wonderful. I'll get stuff posted this evening.
Cool. Thank you.
No worries. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.